place to meet and to share and fellowship together. Father, I pray that we look at the scriptures, that some of it might be difficult for us to hear. It's not the easiest message I've ever given. But Father, I pray that it would be convicting to our hearts, that we would do the things that you call us to do, that we would be mindful of the lost around us and why they're lost, and just be sensitive to their needs. And we just ask all this in Christ's name. Amen. Okay, we're going to continue our study in John chapter 3. Last week we met Nicodemus for the first time, and he came out to meet Jesus at night, and they had a conversation, and we talked a little bit about relational evangelism. And when Jesus talked to Nicodemus and he said, "You must be born again," he wasn't creating a new doctrine. He was basically telling him something that fit Nicodemus' specific worldview as a Pharisee. We'll look at that in a minute and recap a little bit after we look at the first verse today. But when we pick up the conversation where we left off last time, we're still having this conversation, we're still meeting together. And we look at the next few verses. What emerges is a hard truth that many do not like to admit or face. And I think it's something that in the church is almost a problem. And even in our own lives personally, this can be a big problem. I know as I was reading through these passages and putting this message together, I was getting the old 1-2 punch in my own life because of the way I view things and react to things and respond to things. And there needs to be a shift if we're going to do true evangelism. And I kind of thought of a story about a guy who got himself the first car. And as he's driving this car, he hears a strange noise coming from the engine. And it bothers him. And he realizes it's a problem. But he realizes also that if he cranks his radio up, no more noise. So he happily drives with a loud radio, ignoring the noise coming from his engine. But eventually, that reason for that noise creates a lot of damage, and the guy ends up with a giant repair bill because his car broke and can't be used any longer. And it could have been something minor, a minor fix, because he made noise to cover up the sound. And I think that we do that sometimes to the degree in the church, is that we ignore the real issues. We look at ancillary issues, we look at side issues, we major on the minor sometimes, and there's a whole lot of stuff going on around us that we kind of either put our heads in the sand about, ignore, or respond poorly to because we're so busy trying to figure out how to meld with the culture and be relevant in a way that maybe we shouldn't be. And so last week, we talked about relational evangelism. Today we're going to talk about why evangelism and a little bit of how evangelism. So we look at first in verse 16 of chapter 3. It says, "For God so loved the world, he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life." Very familiar verse. Probably the most familiar verse in Scripture. Probably everybody that's hearing this can quote that verse by heart. And the problem that we run into with familiarity sometimes is we forget the meaning behind what we're so familiar with. We take for granted the things that we're familiar with. We do that with people. We do that with all kinds of things. And we take a verse like this, and we repeat it, and we spout it off, and we see it posted up at sporting events, and we see it spray painted on walls, and we see it just everywhere. And do we ever really stop and think, what's being said here? What is the intent behind these words that Jesus is saying to Nicodemus? So here we have Nicodemus. As we looked at last time, he's a Pharisee. He's part of the Sanhedrin, a 71-man council that meets every single day and discusses things of import from a religious perspective to the nation of Israel. Undoubtedly, one of their big topics of conversation lately during this moment is Jesus. This guy running around town, doing miracles, cleansing the temple, doing all those things, stirring people up. And undoubtedly, these guys are having conversations. Who is this Jesus guy? We got to figure out what he's doing and why. And so Nicodemus comes at night and talks to him. And they have a conversation. And Jesus talked to him in a way that Nicodemus would understand and grasp because of Nicodemus' role as a Pharisee. So when Nicodemus is talking with Jesus and trying to figure out what Jesus is talking about, Jesus tells him this verse. And for Nicodemus, it's kind of a new concept. But it's not really that much of a new concept, but more of a new way to look at an old concept. You see, Nicodemus, as a Pharisee and as a faithful follower of the Torah, his whole life was built around the coming Messiah. That's what he studied for, that's what he learned about, that's what he talked about. And now, everything about his life, imagine being Nicodemus at this moment, everything about his life has culminated to this point where now he's meeting the Messiah, who's declaring to him, I am the Son of God, and whoever believes in me shall not perish but have eternal life. Now Nicodemus, his whole concept of faith comes from the Torah, things that you do. And now he's being told something that's completely foreign to him. Just believe in me, Jesus says. And so there's a familiarity because it's based on faith, but it's a new expression of faith for Nicodemus. And as we look through history, this is the concept that we find throughout Scripture. It's always about faith. The expression of faith may be different in different times. Things that God calls people to express their faith, but it's always about faith. And we're going to look at verses 17 and 18. It says, For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but in order that the world might be saved through him. Whoever believes in him is not condemned, but whoever does not believe is condemned already, because he has not believed in the name of the Son, the only Son of God. This is a super important thing for us to focus on. This is why we're called to be salt and light. This is why we're called to the Great Commission. This is why we should be very conscious of how we behave and act in front of other people. And this is the reason for everything that we do as believers. Everyone that we meet, everybody in this world starts out condemned. But we don't like to look at people that way. We like to value people based on some measure of goodness, some measure of behavior. And we forget that every single person we meet that is not in Christ is going to hell. Everyone. Whether they're the nicest person you've ever met or the most heinous person you've ever met. Now, I believe that Scripture makes a strong case for an age of accountability. And I believe that children have to understand the concept of their sin. And I don't believe that babies and small children go to hell. But if you take them out of the equation, and you take every person that can understand the concept of good and bad, every person we come in contact with is condemned to hell because they're born into it. It's not a matter of, oh, you're going to hell because you do this. No one's going to hell because they're a thief. No one's going to hell because they're sexually immoral. No one's going to hell because they're a murderer. They're going to hell because of their genetics. People are born into Adam, and that is what condemns us. That is the thing that we have to keep in mind when we meet people. Instead of focusing on their behavior, instead of focusing on their lifestyle, we have to focus on the real need. They need God. Whether they're good, seem like a good person, whether they're obviously involved in evil things, it doesn't matter. Because they're all in the same boat. They're all in the same situation. They're condemned because they're in Adam. And even though Jesus is now telling Nicodemus something that he never heard before, it's still all about faith. And no matter what age we're in, no matter what time frame in the history of mankind that we're in, the only thing different is the expression of the faith. A good example is last time we spoke, we talked about Jesus mentioned to Nicodemus about the bronze snake that was lifted up in the wilderness. Because that's something Nicodemus would understand. That's the thing that Nicodemus would relate to, having been a student of the Torah. The average person today hears about the bronze snake being lifted up in the wilderness, and they have no idea what it means, what it's all about. But as Jesus talks to him about it, it was a situation where it was an act of faith, it was an act of obedience, that these people were being attacked by snakes because of sin. And Moses was told, make this bronze snake, and put it on a staff, and hold it in the air. And anybody who's bit by a snake looks to this snake on the bronze pole, and they'll be healed. There's no magic in the bronze snake. There's no magic power in the pole. It's an act of faith and obedience. So demonstrating your faith by your act of obedience. It had nothing to do with the bronze snake itself. In fact, Israel sinned with that snake and turned it into an idol at some point and had to be destroyed. This is what James talked about when he said faith without works is dead, because faith should produce obedience. And we can divide all of human history into 7 expressions of faith. We can look at 7 different eras of time, and every single one of them was based on an expression of faith. And if you didn't have faith, you didn't express the faith. And in every single one of these expressions of time, every one of these what we call dispensations, mankind failed tremendously. And some of these things were easy. But because man didn't have the faith or exercise the faith that God gave him, he failed. The first dispensation, the first time, is what's called the Edenic. It's the Garden of Eden. It's a perfect world. You have a man and a woman who have no sin nature, no rebelliousness in them, no desire to please themselves, no desire inherent in them to do wrong. And all they're basically told, do whatever you want, except don't eat from this tree. That's the only expression of faith God required from Adam and Eve, who had no sin nature. And yet the serpent came, the serpent told them, God's not good. I mean, you can look at the passage and read through it and see that there was a conversation. But ultimately, what the serpent was telling them is, God's not really good. And he doesn't want you to know what he knows. So go ahead and eat. And at that moment, they did not have enough faith. They did not exercise the faith that God is good. And they chose to sin. And they failed. Then we have the next era of time. They're cast out of the garden. God tells them, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth. And we come to what's called the antediluvian dispensation. Antediluvian is really just a fancy way of saying pre-flood. It's the time before the flood. And we know that there's a system, an expression of faith that's required of that. We don't really know what it is. The Bible doesn't really explain it to us. The Bible doesn't really go into great detail. But we know that there is an expression of faith required of them, because we find Cain and Abel, where Cain comes and offers his sacrifice, and Abel offers his sacrifice. Abel's sacrifice is accepted. Cain's is not. We really don't know why. We can speculate. But we know that one was accepted and one was not, and one was told, if you do the right thing, you'll be accepted. Well, obviously, Cain knew what the right thing was, but he chose not to do it. He failed to exercise the faith. He failed to do the expression of faith that God called him to do. And we all know the story, he kills his brother. And so, during that period of time, people refused to put their faith in God and failed to do the expression of faith that God called them to do. And flesh became corrupted. And God sent the flood. That brings us to the next dispensation of time, the Noahic. The time from Noah after the flood all the way through to Abraham. It's human government. Capital punishment is established. We're told now that we can eat meat. And we're told, do not kill each other. And there's an expression of faith that God requires. He told them, go, fill the earth, spread out. What did they choose to do? They chose to congregate together in one little place and build a tower to heaven. And if we take the story of the Tower of Babel and match it up to the Masoretic texts, the Mesopotamian tablets that we find that were dug up talking about a guy named Gilgamesh, quickly we find a story that tells us that Nimrod in the Bible, Gilgamesh on the tablets, decided that we're going to build a tower so high that God will never flood us out again. We're taking control of this place. And they rebelled. They did not express faith. They chose to rebel against God. Man failed again. So God establishes a nation. He calls out of that group of people. From the very land that the Tower of Babel was built on, he calls Abraham from the land of Shinar. He says, come, I'm going to make a nation out of you. And through that nation, he gives them the law. And that's the next dispensation. And that's the world that Nicodemus finds himself in. These are the things that you do if you are faithful to God. You're going to obey these 613 rules. You're going to go to the temple and you're going to sacrifice. You're going to live faithfully to God by doing these things. I will know that you're faithful to me when you do these things. But what did they do? They built on it, and they created a mess, and they created rules and regulations that God never intended. And when Jesus shows up on the scene, he tells them, what are you doing? You're more worried about the teachings of man than you are the teachings of God. Your traditions are now more important to you than the things that God taught you. And they messed it up. And so now Jesus shows up. And he dies in their place. And he dies in our place. And now we live in the fifth dispensation, age of grace. What are we called to do now in the age of grace? Put our faith in Jesus Christ. Very simple, very difficult. Sounds easy on paper, but when you really think about it, Jesus said himself, count the cost. Don't take this lightly. If you put your hand to the plow and look back, you're not fit. But now we're living in an age where our expression of faith is by placing our faith in Jesus Christ. And that's what he's telling Nicodemus here. He's telling Nicodemus, this is the expression of faith for this time. Me. And we're going to see that Nicodemus didn't get it. The sixth dispensation is future. It's the tribulation dispensation. And if you want to know what the requirements of that are, you have to look at Matthew 25. And we got to be very careful that we understand that God has different programs for different generations. And in that Matthew 25, very clearly, when Jesus comes and separates what he calls the sheep from the goats, their criteria is, did you take care of the poor? Did you visit the prisoners? Did you heal the sick? Did you do good to people? And unfortunately, today in our modern church, there are people that want to look at Matthew 25 and not understand that that's for a future time and say, well, if we're Christians and we don't do these things, we're not really saved. Our only requirement as believers is placing faith in Jesus Christ. Not that we have to be baptized, not that we have to heal the sick or visit the prisoners. Faith in Jesus Christ is the only expression of faith that we are required right now. And then the seventh dispensation will be the millennial kingdom. That's the thing we're all looking forward to. Jesus Christ returns to earth, sets up his kingdom on earth for 1,000 years. The curse is lifted from the earth, and yet we know how that ends. What's the expression of faith during that time? Is to come to Israel for the Feast of Booths and worship the King. And yet there will be those that refuse to do it. There will be those that do not do it. And the Bible says that they're not going to get any rain, which means the crops are going to fail, and means they're going to go hungry. And at the end, we know Satan is released, and he leads rebellion. Again, there's going to be a portion of mankind that fails because they do not want to place their faith in Jesus Christ. But we can see that throughout time, God has called us to faith, and then he's given us instructions on how to demonstrate that faith. And each thing God has given us to do has ended in disaster for the majority of the people, not because they weren't able to do the thing that God told them to do, or they didn't want to do the thing that God told them to do, but because they did not have the faith to do the thing that God told them to do. And this takes us back to the guy with the car that turned up his radio to ignore the engine sound. We're busy turning up the sound in our lives. We're busy focusing on things that are not important so that we don't pay attention to what's really going on around us. We're more caught up with the behavior of the lost than we are with their condition of being condemned. We're more caught up with the behavior of people outside the church than we are with living obediently ourselves and focusing on God's love and goodness. These are the things that God's wanting us to focus on. Our own obedience. Obedience within the church. When the Bible talks about judging, the Bible says, yeah, you have to judge within the church. You've got to deal with the sin that's in the camp. Don't worry about what the sinners are doing, because the sinners are doing what they should do. They're sinning. I mean, if we're more worried about the behavior of the lost than we are about their souls, we've got a problem. We've put the cart before the horse. Behavior changes after faith. Nowhere did Jesus go into the communities that he went into and find sinners and talk to people and say, hey, if you want to follow me, you can't do, and you start naming off their sins. In fact, the only people that Jesus came against were the religious, the ones who should have known better. And instead, we're too busy trying to assimilate into the culture. We're too busy trying to figure out how to make this appealing to the lost instead of pursuing holiness on our own accounts. And after all, if we're not cool, why would anybody want to be part of us? Well, I got bad news. Christianity is not cool. There's nothing cool about Christianity. There's nothing cool about our faith. It doesn't make sense to the lost. We have to stop selling faith as if it's some cool thing that everybody can just jump on board with, and thinking if we package it just right, we'll get a bunch of people to come participate. But guess what? We can package it any way we want and get people to participate, but when it comes down to the fact that we're starting to teach the truth, the hard things that we have to do as believers, that's when the crowd will thin. Jesus had 5,000 men, not counting women and children, hanging on his every word because he fed them. And then they showed up the next day, and he said, are you here for the meal? Because I'm not feeding you today. Today, you're learning about me and what it takes to follow me. And he laid it out to them hard. And you know how many people he had left over after he got done talking? 12. From 5,000, probably more like 7,000 or 8,000 if you count the women and children. He was left with 12 people. 12 solid followers. Because it's not about the package, and it's not about what we have to offer, and it's not about how cool we can make it. It's about a lifestyle. It's about serving God, the creator of the universe. It's about pursuing holiness in our lives so that we have something important to offer people who are lost and searching and trying to figure things out. So instead of focusing on the fact that the majority of people around us are condemned because of genetics and not behavior, we're busy running around condemning the sin of sinners, of the lost. And then we sit around and congratulate ourselves on how much we're not like them. This cannot be. This cannot be in the church. This cannot be in our personal lives. Jesus told a story. The Pharisee was in the temple praying. And a tax collector, who was arguably the most hated Jew in town. And the tax collector stood there on his knees, and begged God, forgive me, I'm a sinner. And the Pharisee, the religious leader, pounded his chest and said, thank you, God, that I'm not like that guy over there. And Jesus said, who did God accept? The tax collector. The guy that knew he had sinned. But it seems that somehow we have embraced Pharisaical Judaism within the church. And we're so busy running around talking about how good we are and how bad they are that we forget that they are in desperate need of our Father. Self-righteous, self-congratulatory, self-aggrandizing. How are they any better than the Pharisees that Jesus called whitewashed tombs and John the Baptist referred to as a brood of vipers? We need to learn to hear that still small voice of God's Spirit in our lives. Instead of cranking up the volume on our self-righteousness, instead of cranking up the volume on the atrocities of the sinful world around us, we need to start focusing on our relationship with God so that when He tells us to go and do, and talk to, and meet up with someone, that we do it. Instead of rejoicing in the demise of people that we find to be unworthy of God's love because of sin. And this is why we need to shift our evangelism focus from behavior of the lost and are trying to fit in with the culture to holiness. If we can't live holy, we can't pursue holiness as a faithful people, we don't have any hope of offering anything of any value to anybody else. This is what Jesus is talking about here when he's talking to Nicodemus, who has embraced the self-righteous Pharisaical Judaism. And he's telling him, everybody that doesn't believe in me they're already condemned. It's not a matter of maybe they're good enough, maybe they'll get it, maybe God will accept them. I had a conversation this week with a Muslim. And I didn't know they were Muslim at first. We just kind of got in a conversation about sin. And I was kind of playing dumb just to see where the person was coming from. And I said something about, well, why is this bad? Is it because of the Ten Commandments? Oh, yes, that's why it's bad. Well, what about lying? Lying's in the Ten Commandments. Do people that lie go to hell? Oh, yes. Unless you ask God, well, I've told many lies in my life. Am I going to hell? Well, no. You need to ask God, stop lying and ask God to forgive you, and you will. I said, okay. What about what the Bible says about this blood sacrifice stuff? How does that come into play? Oh, you don't need a sacrifice. You don't have to, you don't bring an animal, no blood, no human blood, nothing. You just go and ask God. So then it clicked for me. I'm like, I think this guy might be Muslim. So then I mentioned Jesus. Well, the Bible says this about Jesus. How does that come into play? Did Jesus die for nothing? And he sent me a link to a PBS special where the conflicts of the Gospels nullify anything that Jesus said. And that's when I said, hey, are you Muslim? Yes. And the focus, and I said, well, how do you know that God's forgiven you? And that's about the time when the conversation ended. We can't just think that we're going to be good enough. It's about faith in Jesus Christ and then pursuing holiness. There's no other way. Nobody else has this answer. Everybody else is wondering, am I good enough? Can I do it? No, you can't. But so many try in vain. Verse 19 says, and this is the judgment. Light has come into the world, and people love darkness rather than light because their works were evil. And this is why that no matter what expression of faith, no matter what thing that God called mankind to do, to express faith in Jesus, in Him, for their salvation, whatever dispensation it was, mankind failed because ultimately we love the darkness. We love to sin. We do not want to be under authority. We do not want to see authority over us. We view authority as restrictive. We review authority as something that's negative rather than something that's protective and good for us. And because of that, the majority of people will fail when it comes to expressing faith. And this is the point that we have to present to the lost, that there's freedom found in Christ. Imagine if we really trusted God in the way that we're commanded to trust Him. Imagine if what we claim to be our faith in God was really put into practice. We would be completely and utterly free of worry because we would just know that Dad's got us covered. But we don't, because we have that fear of authority, that little bit of love of darkness, that little bit of, well, God helps those that help themselves. And He says, just trust us. Just trust me, He says. When I was a kid, there was never a day in my life where I wondered if there was going to be dinner. There was never a day in my life where I wondered, am I going to have clothes to wear today? Why? Because I fully, 100% trusted my mom and dad to take care of me. They never did anything that would cause me to think they wouldn't or couldn't. And it was just, the thought never crossed my mind. It never came into my mind the possibility of, I'm not going to eat tonight. I'm not going to have clothes to wear tomorrow. I'm not going to have a place to sleep. I just went and was a kid. And I lived in that freedom, in that carefreeness of being a kid. And then Jesus tells us, come to me as little children. What does that mean? The carefreeness of a child, trusting in a loving parent that is able and willing to take care of everything we need. But if we can't get that here, how are we going to present that out there? And if we're busy worried about behavior of the lost and condemning the people for doing what they're meant to do, because they're sinners and they're going to sin, and then we ignore the sin in our midst, how are we going to convey that message to those out there? How are we going to live in that carefreeness of just being a kid and doing the things that God gives us to do if we're not willing to love and trust and have faith with abandon? This is what Jesus meant when he said, "Come to me as little children." And believe me, there's probably nobody in this room that struggles with this more than I do. And it's not an easy message to teach, because as many fingers as I'm pointing out, I got that many more pointing back at me on something like this. I struggle with this. I struggle with abandon. I struggle with complete and utter faith in God who promises everything. But imagine what our evangelism would look like if we lived out our freedom in Christ. Instead of worrying about how close can I get to the flame before I get burned, how cool can I package this ministry without edging up to sin to attract people in, that all comes right off the table. Now it's about, how can I please God? How can I put my life in line with what God wants me to do according to my individual calling? It's not about what a church tells me I should look like or do. It's not what a council of men have decided what Christianity looks like, maybe 2,000 years ago. It's about putting your faith and trust in a living God who loves you intimately. Look at verses 20 and 21, and we'll finish up with those. For everyone who does wicked things hates the light and does not come to the light, lest his work should be exposed. Whoever does what is true comes to the light, so that it may be clearly seen that his works have been carried out in God. One thing we have to be very careful of is not forget that man is not good. We have this idea that in our minds that man is inherently good, and left to his own devices, will choose to do the right thing. Well, Jeremiah 17:9 says, the heart is desperately wicked above all things. We are not good. And left to our own device, we are selfish and we are self-serving. And these are those that love, and there are those that love sin. They love to sin. They embrace it. They pursue it. It defines them. And they're not interested in our message. They're not interested in our lifestyle. And those are the times that we have to pray and ask for discernment. And I hate to use this phrase, but that we don't waste our time with those who are bent on pursuing evil. When it comes to our evangelism, it has to be relational. It has to be relevant to the person that we're speaking to. But at the same time, we also have to recognize that there's a time where you just fold up and go. Jesus sent out his followers and he told them, if your message is rejected, if you're not received, wipe the dust off your feet and leave and go to the next place. Because it comes to a point where if we're wasting all of our time trying to pursue people that just will not hear, that just will not turn, that love to sin, we're missing out on going after the people that really need the message and that want something, that are searching for something. When Jesus told them to wipe the dust off their feet, that was a symbolic act of disdain. That was basically writing off sometimes an entire village of people. You think about Sodom and Gomorrah when the angels went there and he said, let's go find 10 people, 10 in this whole city. And they couldn't find them. And I guarantee you that there was warnings going forth. That there were people saying, hey, we should be, God is angry and destruction's coming. Ha ha ha. And look what happened. God destroyed the entire, all the cities of the plain were destroyed. Jesus said in Matthew 7:6, do not give dogs what is holy, and do not throw your pearls before pigs, lest they trample them under foot and turn to attack you. This is a reality. There are those who are not only ambivalent to the message, but downright hostile to the message. And again, I hate to say it, but to waste our time trying to convince those who just will not hear is an exercise in futility. And I think that Satan will put people like that in our path to get us to waste our time arguing. And then it becomes a matter of being right instead of correct. Then it becomes a matter of proving a point rather than saving a soul. and we get into a big mess. I know Pastor Eric's talked about apologetics from the pulpit, and that apologetics is for us. It's not going to convince the skeptic. It's not going to convince the non-believer. It's certainly not going to convince the person who has animosity towards our faith. And then we should not take these things, these truths, and these things that we learn and understand and use them as weapons to beat down our opponents so we can have a victory and say, oh, I showed him. What did you show him? That you have a better argument and he's still going to hell? You showed him nothing. We got to love people. This is where we need to pray for wisdom and discernment so that we know that when we're hitting resistance, sometimes we're hitting resistance because that person's ready to break and it's their last ditch effort not to surrender. And sometimes, and often we're hitting resistance because that person is just opposed to God. The bottom line is this. Evangelism is not something we go out and do. It's something that we live. It should be our lifestyle. And that doesn't mean that we're out there yelling and screaming and calling people whoremongers or any kind of thing like that, and making every single conversation we have with every single person we meet about Jesus. It means living your life in such a way, living my life in such a way that when people look at me, they know that there's something different there. And they know that I've got peace. Who doesn't want peace? If I'm in turmoil, and I'm in distress, and I'm telling people, yeah, you should go follow Jesus and be like me. I can be in turmoil and distress without Jesus. I don't need your faith. And it's a matter of focusing on our relationship with God, surrendering ourselves, faith with abandon, turning off the noise, listening to that still small voice of God when He's telling us to make repairs and changes and things in our lives that need to be tweaked and worked on, or pruned and destroyed. Our lives should be living testimonies of faith. Last night I was listening to the Petra song, Seen and Not Heard, and I love the line from that. It says, sometimes God's children should be seen and not heard. There's truth to that. Our faith should be evident in our life, not just our words. And if we can't preach our faith by our lifestyle, then no words that we have to say are going to impact anybody. When we do have the opportunity to share, it should just be a natural part of who we are. It should be just a natural progression of a relationship that we've built with somebody, that we've met them on their terms, according to their worldview, taking the time to get to know them so that we know what concerns them, how they relate to God, if they relate to God. How do we present to them something that's going to be relevant to their life? And that's what Jesus is doing here with Nicodemus. Jesus is having a conversation with God. Jesus is taking the time to spend his time. And I'm sure, we're all busy. But I don't know who's busier than the Son of God who's sent here to save the world. Jesus is probably the most important guy that ever walked the face of the earth. And yet he stopped. He didn't make an appointment. Nicodemus didn't call Jesus' secretary and say, hey, I need to meet with Jesus tonight. Has he got free time? Nicodemus snuck out in the middle of the night to meet with Jesus because he didn't want anybody to know he was meeting with him. And Jesus stopped and took the time to talk to him. Relational. He recognized the importance of Nicodemus' soul. So when we go out and about and we interact with people, and we're so quick to judge and condemn people for their behavior, remember this. Their behavior is not sending them to hell. The fact that they're going to hell is driving their behavior. And we're not going to change the culture, we're not going to change the world around us unless we're willing to focus on the important thing. People are condemned. Whether they're good, whether they're bad, whether they're nice, whether they're mean, they're condemned. And every one of them, God loves enough to send Jesus Christ to die for them, and enough to change our lives so that we can impact them. So last thing, if we don't get anything else today, let's not focus on the behavior of the lost. Let's look at our own behavior. Let's work on that. But let's not get caught up with the sin of those that are going to hell. Because the sin is just a symptom of the disease. We can put band-aids and we can legislate morality. And we can talk about all kinds of things that we need to put in place to stop these people from doing these things. But the only way we're really going to change them is by changing their hearts and love them. Let's pray. Father, we come before you. Lord, this is a difficult passage to preach through, and it's never fun to look at ourselves and see where we lacked and see where we're needing work. But Lord, I pray that you would transform us into people that look at others with your eyes, not with self-righteous indignation, not with self-congratulatory expressions of how good we are, but help us to recognize that without you, we're lost, we're nothing, and that there's millions of people around us that need that same message of your love and your grace. Help us to live out our faith with abandon, Lord. Help us to be able to just know that you're going to take care of us and that you're going to work things out for us as you promised us, so that we can focus on the real thing, the needs of others. Lord, I pray that as we go forth this holiday season, that we don't get caught up in the busyness of it, but that we focus on our faith, the reason why we take this time to recognize the birth of our Savior and the importance of that. We pray all this in Christ's name.